So we're going to talk about econometrics. We have three esteemed panelists here, and I'll invite each of them to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about themselves, and explain how their businesses are relevant to the world of analytics. So Morgan, we'll start with you.
Okay. I'm Morgan, the founder and CEO of Piper, and we are a brand new receipting company, so an alternative to email receipts. We have a digital receipting platform. We therefore have great insight into transactional level detail across cards and across industries. So when you think of the power behind that, that's kind of what we're involved in. That's what we do.
Jessica?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Tedgy. I'm from Swift IQ. Swift IQ is a startup based out of Chicago that actually works with retailers and CPGs to store and unify transactional level data. And we're data agnostic, so we can really take in any sort of data, your product catalog, web behavior, email click history, but help you gain insights and visualize it. So I'll go into a little bit further, but excited to be on this panel today.
And Cameron.
Hi, I'm Cameron from Fathom Voice, and we take, in one way we're a phone company, but we are trying to marry data and analytics information to help people better understand how to sell to their clients and how to improve their customer service and their sales opportunities and leverage everything that's available to them in real time.
So we're going to talk about how analytics fits into the world of mobile commerce and retail in general. And I guarantee we'll be on this panel for 35 minutes or so. And within that 35-minute span, I guarantee everyone that I will get 5 calls from telemarketers in the next 35 minutes based on something I bought, someone I spoke to, some conversation I had in the last 20 years. So is analytics effective? Is it a dissatisfier? Is it used correctly in the world of retail? And I'll throw that question to the panel first. Cameron, why don't we start with you?
Sure. First of all, I think it's a very open-ended question. I don't think we actually know what analytics is today. It's something, we just started collecting this data a couple years ago, and now we're starting to make decisions of what it is. I think where we'll find it to be most effective is when we're able to tear down some of the walls between different data systems and really share everything together so that we can not call you 20 years after you buy your car, but know that the car's already been delivered and how we can pull all this stuff together. So I don't think it's quite being utilized exactly correct today, but I think it's something that is just evolving quickly over time, and it'll take more access to get done.
So you know that I'll be expecting a call from the vehicle warranty company, the ambiguous vehicle warranty company any moment about that.
Sure.
Okay. How about your perspective, Jessica? Is it being used properly in retail?
I think sometimes it is, and I think at an enterprise level, normally people are able to see your sales and use those analytics to maybe grow in a certain region, internationally, locally. But I think where everything's going, and given this conference focus on mobile, is analytics needs to come down to the customer level, not just at the the retailer's level. And I think that's where there's a big gap, and there has been, because transactional level data is very, very high velocity, high volume, and it was very expensive to store this data. So cloud-based technology is now allowing retailers to actually store this data or leverage cloud-based companies, be able to then gain insights. So I think it's a paradigm shift from thinking about analytics at an enterprise level to now going down to the consumer level, and how do you use this data to make it contextually relevant for the consumer and personalize it, as we've heard over and over again, that users have things at their fingertips, and how do you make it so they're engaged much more.
And what do you think, Morgan? Do you see it being used the way it can be to maximize its potential?
Occasionally, very rarely. And I think those are the most exciting instances, but I think it does have a ways to go. It's not just looking at transactional data, but it gets really exciting when you take in a number of different data sets, from social media to tracking location, anything like that. When you combine those different sets, that's when it becomes very interesting, and we do have a long ways to go on that.
So you mentioned different data sets, and I guess one of the most overused terms, one of many overused terms, is this 360-degree profile of the customer. Is it realistic to use analytics to get this? Or is there, a combination of science and guesswork? Or is it just completely unworkable? You can only go up to a certain level, in order of making something effective in the mobile commerce sector. Morgan, why don't we start with you?
I think it is realistic, time-wise, probably at least a couple years out until it's seen consistently. There'll definitely be companies that are going to lead the path and are leading the path towards that. I think what's going to be interesting is how consumers adopt and the different consumer choices that they're opting into. I think that's going to change rapidly over the next couple of years.
What about you, Jessica? What are your thoughts on this concept of using analytics to create this whole view of the consumer?
Yeah, I think it's definitely hard mining Twitter data to really figure out what people are doing, and I think that's taking it potentially too far, and some companies might lead in that. But in general, I think it's important to have your CRM systems connected to your point of sale systems, to understanding maybe weather-related data or what's important to the retail sector that you're in. What matters versus if it's a holiday coming up and so forth, and being able to unify all that data and then, create analytics and insights off of that rather than just looking at just your sales or just your, CRM.
Cameron, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of people end up disagreeing with me on this one in that I'm kind of on the other side of online privacy, where everyone's pushing to really hide what they're putting online, or really concerned with what's getting out there. I think actually the younger population is actually going to change this dramatically, where we don't care what's going out. It's actually completely a convenience thing, that we don't want to be inconvenienced by almost anything. And so we're willing to share more of this data, which in result builds that profile of the person almost entirely of who they are and what they want. So I think the answer is that yes, it is definitely coming, and definitely within a year or two it'll be available. And it's more of a generational shift, not a technology shift. The tech already exists.
So that's an interesting point. So you talk about convenience versus giving up privacy in order to gain convenience.
Correct.
But if you give up privacy and I end up getting solicitations from vendors I don't want to hear from, isn't that the same end result as being a dissatisfier?
I think it's easy to silence the people you don't want to hear from. I think that gets easier every day. And I think you'll find that the more engaged, the more accurate marketers will engage in better marketing. They'll engage with you in the way that you want to be engaged, whether it be an ad on your Amazon or an email message to you or a push update to your phone. Marketing as a whole is evolving in that direction of not just doing the cold call or the spam message to your inbox. The whole thing is evolving together.
So everyone that's spoken before you, the general consensus of we're still very early in the game in terms of mobile commerce. There's a lot of things happening down, in terms of beaconing and with our NFCs, a realistic technology in terms of payment, mobile marketing, things like that. In the whole spectrum of everything that constitutes a mobile commerce ecosystem, is the analytics portion probably at the most nascent part of that, the earliest in the spectrum? Jessica, what do you think? Is it probably the most immature of the technologies?
I would agree so, and I think it's because it's just the frequency and the velocity of mobile data coming in is so much more. And then in terms of being able to track a user, if they're just on your regular commerce website, or they're on your app, or they're in store, to be able to tie all that together, that makes analytics very tricky, because I don't know, if I'm a retailer XYZ, I don't know if Jessica shopped online,
Right.
and then how do you tie that together? I think it was interesting to hear Chico's perspective and how they've created this proprietary, ecosystem, but that's not necessarily possible for, a smaller size retailer and so forth. So, but I definitely think mobile, but also we've seen a lot of technology recently that allows us to very easily capture mobile data. So exactly what you're clicking on, if you opt into it, there's tag providers that allow us to be able to capture that data, and we can stream it and then gain insights very quickly.
So Morgan, do you think mobility enables analytics, or does analytics drive mobility adoption? Which is the chicken and egg?
Depends on how if you already have a mobile application, or if you're tracking it already. I would say it can enhance it. I don't think it's necessarily driving it. I think it can enhance it to be more effective depending on what the goal is of the retailer.
Okay. So let's talk about data privacy and opting in and making sure that things are secure and not getting our consumers and customers upset. How do you solve this problem? Morgan, why don't we start with you, and then we'll work back over to Cameron.
Ask them. It's very simple. You make it clear, forthcoming, not in the fine print. Ask them what they're comfortable sharing. Everybody's different. Everybody has different levels, and I think it's important to give them the choice directly to the consumer.
Okay. Jessica?
I think from our perspective, we think, personal information can be, when you're sending it out to a vendor to do analytics, or if you're creating another layer, you can encrypt that data. The merchant should just hold it rather than giving it out to many vendors. So we've seen examples where in order to give you personalized recommendations, we don't need to see personal information. You can mask it or encrypt it and send it to us, and then we'll give you the results back, and then you can decode it. So I think it really is thinking about how do you limit the transmission of private data of consumers as much as possible, yet still be able to get actionable insights.
Yeah, I would only sum up what they said. You have to be able to opt in, and you have to take on the social responsibility of having this data. As we become more public with what we tell everyone, we are noticing who we tell, right? We are saying we're only telling you, and that's not for you to make a new revenue stream of selling. It's you're in charge of protecting that data now and securing it. So you have to opt in, and you have to secure it.
Are retailers very, very concerned about the data privacy issue? Is it something that keeps them up at night where, obviously they want to remain compliant with, all types of, government regulatory mandates, things like that. But are they as active as you would expect them to be? Why don't we start with you, Jessica?
Yes, absolutely. I think we heard it a few times today as well, like all the breaches that we've heard with big retailers, that you think are very savvy and sophisticated, and here having those breaches. And us as a smaller company or, growing company as well, we always tell the retailer, mask all the data that you want. We don't want to get it. It puts us in that position too. So I think it's always, like you said, kind of social responsibility of each of the participants in the ecosystem. But our end goal and the merchant's end goal is to be able to give you, if you're able to give us your demographics and your location data, then we want to make the experience better for you. So to be able to personalize it, that's what we're.
Morgan, from your perspective, are retailers taking the data privacy issue as seriously as you would expect them to?
Absolutely. And it's kind of just a given. It doesn't even necessarily come up in conversation. It's just you kind of assume that it is and that everything's covered and that it's a big concern, and make sure you address it, in terms of what technology they're enabling. But it's almost a given now.
Okay. Would you echo? I should imagine you'd echo those thoughts as well, Cameron. No one is really.
Yeah, I would say you can prove this by looking at the job title creation over the last few years. You're seeing a lot more of chief security officers and things that fall underneath that to kind of prove that these threats are being taken seriously.
So we've had a number of large retailers here, at the mobile payment conference, but they probably constitute less than 1% of all the merchants out there. So what do you do to make analytics, which is a very technology, financially resource-driven type of solution, how do you make that available to tens of thousands of mid-size and even smaller merchants out there? Is it even doable? Morgan, I want to ask you that question.
Absolutely, and I think that's the next stage that we're at. At first, analytics was starting just to collect all the data because it became feasible with cloud storage, so it was affordable, so you could collect everything. Now it's being used by larger retailers in a digestible way, and I think that third step is not only to smaller retailers, SMBs, but to consumers themselves, giving them analytics about their own spending and making it just completely digestible by a number of different parties involved. And I think that's where we are now and where it becomes interesting. There's technologies available now, to take data sets and make them visual and digestible.
Okay. Cameron?
Yeah, I would say it's completely in the reach of almost any business, regardless of the size. You've seen the dramatic decrease in the cost for storage and the cost for processing power over the last 5 years, which is what was holding that industry, that division of the industry back from being able to do these things.
Right.
Those costs are gone now. So this is something that everyone can be doing at any scale and should be doing.
So Jessica, from a tangible standpoint, many merchants, the pet shop owner, computing, processing power, things like that are still kind of topics that are beyond what they're willing to learn or invest time in. So how do you get all this vast amounts of data to the pet shop owner and say, hey, this customer, when they come in, they buy X product, dog biscuits, or they haven't bought this for a cat for a while, you may want to send them a coupon.
Yep.
How do you do that from a mechanic standpoint to an SMB business?
Sure. So just giving example, I think there are misconceptions, and you both echoed it in terms of being able to handle it by enterprises, but also just thinking about it that you want to go out to a cloud-based provider who's in your vertical or has done similar programs. I think that's kind of key, because sometimes you hear about big enterprises that you put in your data and we visualize it for you. Just because it's in a pretty chart doesn't mean it's actually actionable.
Right.
So working with, companies that allow you to do that, I think it's great to focus on your vertical. But to make it actually, when you distill it down, it's actually transactional data is very rich, because you're able to see line item by line item what's being purchased, where, at what time of the day. So you can see maybe dog biscuits are being sold at, people trying to buy it at certain time of the month or day, and you can really start to dig deep into this data. And, it does require a certain type of sophistication to be able to take it from being able to see this data, but then productionalize it to actually send an email to 10,000 users that have, Yorkshires versus Golden Shepherds. But I think there's definitely a way for SMBs to be able to start at a department level, at the marketing level, and figure out some insights, and then slowly grow the sophistication.
Anyone have any questions so far? Yes, ma'am.
So for our platform specifically, I can speak to, we have an anonymous choice or a customized marketing option. So no, even if you choose the anonymous choice, it's just that you don't receive the same value back in terms of they're hyper-targeted. We give consumers a choice even down to the brand level that you prefer. And can silence, much to his point, ones that you might have bought, a TV one year and you don't need one the next year, let's say. So that you don't get that convenience factor, but absolutely not. There's still, there's going to be many marketing channels available to consumers. It's not that these are the only ways to reach a customer. It's just the enhancement.
Jessica, Cameron, any follow-up?
I think you'll see retailers stop spending lots of money to advertise towards the people who don't opt in. It's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly untargeted. If they're going to come buy the product, great, but we're going to invest resources and time and energy into the people who we know are engaged and want the product. I think you're going to see, rather than the shotgun method of marketing, it's very much more of the targeting this pen to me because I've initiated that I like a off yellow pen.
I think I might add to that in terms of, I think you treat a user who's not opting in as a first-time user, and those can be actually really valuable. So you treat them like an anonymous user, and if they decide not to opt in, what are the things that are most popular, selling, and see if I can get them to be loyal to my brand. And so I think it's important not to just forget about the users who don't want to share their, private information, in terms of, but treat them as these are customers that are not currently my customers. How do I engage them and treat them like that?
Okay. Yes. No, that's okay. I need the exercise.
Thank you. Hi. Can you share any insights or experiences of sort of innovative ways banks or card issuers are supporting retailers with this data analytics? I know the focus has largely been in-store and kind of looking at how the experiences are in-store, but is there data points and things beyond just point-of-sale data?
Yeah, so the credit card backers and the gateways have both been using this data to build profiles on consumers for quite some time. It's proved to be a very successful model for them. So if you tend to always use your American Express card at a, I don't know, some very inexpensive thing, it'll actually can negatively impact your internal credit profile to American Express. Whereas if you always buy it to buy your business class airline ticket, it'll positively impact your credit profile at American Express. JP Morgan is doing this and has been for quite some time. They have a huge division in Ohio that does nothing but that. So yeah, it's very much used at what are you buying, when are you buying it, and how are you buying it, to almost every level, from the person who's selling it to the person who's backing the credit to you for buying it.
I can add, we've seen trends where retailers are looking at what types of, this is not on the card processing, but what percentage of their population is using an Amex versus Visa and MasterCard or Discover, because they're paying higher fees for Amex and Discover, and whether they really need to carry those services. And then also seeing, if they have food stamp programs and so forth, what percentage of that, and really being able to get those insights and then tailor their processing that way. Card processing.
There's a ton of different things that are taken into a consumer profile that, go to your credit rating or, that their banks are looking into. And point of sale data would just be one of those. There's correlated data, so even across just merchants, you don't have to look down at the transactional level, but you can just look at the types of retailers where people shop, combine that with their car type that they drive, and you can very closely segment that user with just those two pieces of information.
Okay. So you talk a lot about one-on-one engagement through analytics. A merchant, whether it's a retailer or some other financial services organization or some other business, communicating directly with a potential customer or an existing consumer. Can you do things like viral marketing, where you can plant ideas within communities of consumers and customers and, I guess basically measure propensities on adoption rates, things like that? Is something is that possible through analytics? No? I know in other industries like telecom, it's been done.
So there's so Angie's List, I'm sure we're all familiar with them, is actually trying something very similar to this. They're using data of who is scheduling what type of appointments in what area using their mobile apps for geolocation, and then deploying additional resources to those locations and telling people that those resources are available to them. They're calling it like neighborhood handyman or something. So I think they're trying to kind of do the location-based and surge pricing based on data or surge resource or surge productizing based on what's happening in the area.
So it's possible then to market to communities as opposed to the individuals. Is that
Right.
is that fair? Yeah.
Yeah. To add to that, from our experience, we can definitely target, if we're able to collect data, if we know consumers between the age of 18 and 24, females, might be more likely to buy shoes every month. You can actually categorize them by facets and tags and then send out personalized emails to those users. So analytics can definitely help you create segments and look at facets and tags in a much more community setting, or go all the way down one-to-one and be able to send, mass target emails to, similar to what Amazon does, is when you buy a product, it tells you you're more likely to buy this, or what's more, we can actually do that as well.
So, Morgan, in your estimation, what will it take to get analytics adoption increasing on behalf of merchants and businesses? Is it just a matter of time because the whole mobile commerce snowball continues to grow, or are there some specific things that need to happen in terms of infrastructure or things like that?
I think there'll be a couple of powerful stories that come out of people doing it well. And once those become known and people see the benefit, you see it, you hear about it every now and again, but I think again, consistency is key. So if you keep seeing it, hearing stories, people are going to look internally and say, why aren't we doing this, kind of following suit? I think the first step in doing it is starting to collect everything and anything that you can. There was the Chico's example today of, they're looking, he designs the technology, but then somebody in store is in charge of the other part. I think getting everybody together and starting to collect anything you can throughout that entire process And then starting to map will be the second thing, but starting to collect any data points that you can is really key to get this started. Before you can do analytics, you have to start collecting the data. So I think that needs to happen.
Okay. And what do you think, Jessica? What needs to happen to increase adoption of analytics?
I think it's the misconception of thinking, a few years ago where you have to make an enterprise-wide decision to do analytics. You can actually, given, technology, as you mentioned, the cost going down for storage and processing, you can actually do it for a small department or one department and start small and then actually see your ROI and then continue growing. So I think it's that misconception that, if we have to do analytics, we have to collect everything, all departments have to be on board, and only then, and we have to make a 3 to 5 year decision. I think it's actually, the technology is enabled for it to be much simpler than that. So,
Cameron, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you'll see, not the responsibility, but I think you'll see the products that move towards the POS system. And I think you'll see that for the SMB market, it's going to become their responsibility to provide that type of solution, or they're not going to sell much of their product anymore. The market has been educated to want analytics. It's a cool word. If your company's not doing it, you're not cool.
Okay.
So if the POS system isn't providing that back out in some type of back office management, the company's going to move to something that is.
Right. I think most companies here don't care if they're doing something cool or not, as long as they're making money. I think that would probably be the way they measure it, but that's a good point. Do you have examples of companies, I'm sure you do, that have not done analytics well, and we won't name them, but if you can give some examples of things that missed the mark or lessons learned or something that we can take away, some cautionary tales?
I think this is a couple years old, but I believe it was, I'm not sure if it was Target, or I shouldn't even name it, but it was the story where there was a mail or coupon offer sent to someone's household for their teenage daughter, pregnancy-related items. It was vitamins or it was because they purchased something that triggered that their daughter was potentially pregnant, and there was a whole outcry. So I think there is definitely a very big lesson learned that analytics can tell you a whole lot, and sometimes it's too much information. You need the human.
Good example. Bad execution.
Yeah.
But
So
they're able to identify it, which is awesome. But then I think that's the second part. Now we know, how do we effectively and not violate any
privacy.
How do we
and
choose
so
not to act on that information?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you, Cameron, any cautionary tales for anyone in terms of how it should or should not be used?
Yeah, I don't have any story to follow yours. But I think just as industries, you can see the success of some industries versus others that have embraced this idea of analytics-based marketing, and those that haven't. And the ones that are currently IPOing for billions of dollars are the people who have, and the industries that have forgotten about it and left it alone are staying at their static revenues. And I think the market speaks pretty fairly for that.
I actually have one more example to add.
Yes.
I heard recently it was a consumer good company that had invested millions of dollars in coming out with a new chocolate, let's say, product. And they tested it out, and they thought it wasn't doing well. It was chocolate with almonds or salty or something of that sort. But what they realized is actually was categorized incorrectly. So it was actually doing really well in its own category, but because they miscategorized it as a snack instead of a chocolate bar, it looked like it wasn't doing well, and they were about to pull it off the markets so I think it's cautionary tales like that makes you think that, you can depend on analytics and you see numbers, but there should always be a human eye and sort of somebody verifying information, because as we know, the more data you get, the messier it gets, and it's not necessarily clean.
That's a good point. You can become almost velocitized by so much data.
Right.
Okay. Any questions? No? You guys got to stay awake. We have another hour to go, and you're not getting rid of me. So, all right. So those are some cautionary tales. So what about success stories in terms of analytics? There's certainly, we know it's early in the game here, but there've got to be some examples of companies that are doing it well. Morgan, anything?
Well, there's lots of fun stats and stories out there of correlated purchases that I like because they're so obscure. You would never know them if you just were looking at something, kind of in store or something like that. You would never be able to tie these two things together. And I think that's where you have to take in different points and kind of look at it, put it all into a melting pot and see what comes out. a couple that come to mind I think are interesting is that luxury goods, retailers or brands didn't want to be associated with Costco. And it turned out that the highest luxury brand purchasers were also Costco lovers. They were the most frequent shoppers at Costco. So when you look at those two things, it's not something that was necessarily intuitive, but when you look at the numbers, the proof's in the pudding. So taking a look, not necessarily have theories, but be willing to prove them one way or the other is key. And then Camelback water bottles and Lexus drivers are correlated as well. So,
Okay.
fun facts of the day.
Jessica, what success stories can you share with us?
Sure. So without naming the retailer, what we worked with a consumer product good company who wanted to personalize the emails. They sent static emails once a week. It was a recipes website. And what we were able to do with our analytics engine is be able to mine all the data based on recipes, facets, and tags. What did people actually click on in the prior 2 years? We mined the website to be able to collect all that data. So it was quite a large amount of data that we collected, but we did an 8-week test where we had a control group, 500,000 people that got the static email, and then 500,000 that got a personalized one-to-one. So if I clicked on dessert, you clicked more on chicken recipes. Based on that, what did you get? And the first week we were crossing our fingers. It was the 8-week test. It was like, hopefully we'll get a single-digit, increase. We got 110% lift.
Wow.
Of the number of users that actually clicked on, the click ratio. And it was an 8-week test, so, we figured that was a fluke, but it went actually pretty relatively well. And on average, there was a 55% lift on sending emails that were more relevant down to each user, learning more about the user and sending them those. So as you can imagine, whether it's website traffic or you're actually getting them to purchase something, in this case it wasn't that you can purchase online, it's just driving your brand. It's, this money that you spend on advertisements actually coming to fruition.
Very good. Cameron, what about you? Success stories?
Yeah, I think one of the markets that's really embraced this the best recently is the new version of a box company. Not a big retailer, but someone who's sending these personalized boxes to your house every month. They really looked into what your social profiles are and what you're interested in via survey they give you and then other data about yourself, and they really personalize these boxes and then mail them to you of stuff you really like. And based on what you like and give feedback on, they keep personalizing and keep making it better every month. I'd say they've done an incredible job of harnessing this whole idea of how do you personalize via analytics
Okay.
to consumers.
Very good.
Good example, sucker for those.
Any questions?
It's bad.
No? So last question I have, or maybe not, I take that back, maybe I'll have another one. But in the world of mobile commerce, how important is analytics? I mean, what role does it play in this ecosystem we're talking about? So we start with you, Jessica, and then we'll work our way around.
I think it's more relevant than ever because consumers want, whatever they're viewing on their website. I think there's a stat that I've seen, I don't remember where it was quoted, is for every 1 second that your mobile website, there's a delay, there's a 7%, drop in sales. So I think being able to do analytics, on all the information that you have on your website and then being able to be responsive very quickly and provide that is extremely important to stay engaged.
Okay. Cameron, what role does it play in mobile commerce?
I agree that it plays a huge role. There's a lot of distractions in the world today. So it's not that there are 3 TV channels, and if you put a commercial on one of those 3 channels, that you're going to get your audience to watch it. You're begging for everyone's attention. So the analytics has to play into the marketing effect of what you're doing to push your product to the consumer. And if you're not doing that properly, you're going to miss the consumer.
Okay. Morgan, in terms of the mobility and the immediacy of it?
I think it's absolutely vital. I mean, I think I liked it best when you said, you probably have however X number of unread emails, 50, but you don't have any unread text messages. I mean, we're addicted to our phones. It's growing. I don't know if there's even more hours in the day to spend on the phone that we're not already. But our phones tell us so much about ourselves. If you were to look at the apps that everybody's installed, everybody's different. But that phone, not even counting that it tells you where exactly you are. It tells you so much about your habits, who you're talking to. Everything about you can be, found on your phone. So I think using that and then using it right there where you have it is absolutely key.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Last? All right, thank you very much to our panelists. Appreciate it.